This is about actually raising the bar. Because if I give you the skills to speak and it's actually in alignment with who you say you want to be, now we can have a different type of conversation that is about holding you accountable to that. And now me teaching you the skills of how it is that you can live in alignment with that.
Hey, I'm Kathleen Rumford from Katalytic Empowerment, where we delve into topics for parents and homeschoolers. And in this 6-part Katalytic Empowerment series, we'll be learning from our guest, Donnie Fitzpatrick, who you just briefly heard, on how parents can help their kids discover their strengths and their best life. Donnie is a passionate high school educator and counselor from British Columbia, Canada. He has his master's degree in educational leadership and counseling and is a certified life coach. Donnie's mission is to help students throw off beliefs that might be holding them back or limiting them, and to support them in discovering their core values and strengths, who they are as human beings, so that they can better navigate their high school years and create their own best life beyond high school, whatever that looks like for them. His work with students, of whom he has interviewed close to 4,000, is based on the work of Marcus Buckingham, known as the world's most prominent researcher on strengths and leadership at work, and author of 2 of the best-selling business books of all time. In this 6-part series, Donnie will be sharing 2 main points. First, how we as parents can help our kids discover their strengths so that they lean into the lives that are right for them. And second, how we as parents can show up and check in with our kids in a safe, non-judgmental way in order to get them to share what's really going on in their lives and in their heads, so we can form honest relationships of walking alongside them. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel so you get notified when we post future videos in this series and on other topics relevant to you and your family. Now, let's jump into part 1. So, Donnie, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and wisdom with us.
Thanks for having me.
So to stay focused on our short time together, I'm going to try to keep us centered around how can parents show up in a way that is open in order to draw out their kids and interact with them in an honoring way to honor their being. But before we even dive into that with regard to parents, Donnie, I'm curious to hear more about your background as an educator and what you were seeing that led you to this mission with the students and helping them find their voices.
When I first started teaching and I got into education 20 years ago, I actually got into it kind of by fluke. I really went to university just because I wanted to play basketball. I had no desire really to be taking school. I really just wanted to play basketball. That was my love. That was the only thing I knew how to do. But in the 20 years that I've been teaching, when I first got into teaching, it was all about what is the right way to do this. I was still looking for my superiors, whether it be a principal or a superintendent, to give me the nod that, yeah, you're doing it right. And then I realized just like 2 years in, I'm like, something's missing in this picture. Like if kids are sitting there and they're saying all the right things, but they're really thinking something different, then I'm not really educating kids. What I'm doing is I'm getting them to be really good at just spitting back what I want them to say, what the curriculum says that they're supposed to say. And I was like, this just doesn't seem right. And so I started out in phys ed and in social studies. I got out of that. I went into English, hoping that that would be different because I was really passionate about trying to teach kids to read and write. And then I was like, no, I'm still missing it. And then the shift happened where I was like, oh, the key to this whole thing, it's not about putting information in, it's about how do I draw information out? And that's when I had one of my biggest shifts. So that's kind of like how I started getting into kind of looking at education being a little bit different. It was like, it's not about putting information in, it's about drawing it out. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we make when we're educating is we forget it's not just about putting the information in, although that's important. Like they do have to have those basic skills. But when you want to see kids and bring out the best in them, the only way you can do that is if you learn a way to draw that information out of them, because that's the essence of who they are. So yeah, so that's kind of where it started.
So you've been in the education field for 20 years. in the school system, the public school system, right? You didn't necessarily know what was going on behind the scenes with the kids. You knew that they were potentially regurgitating the correct answers, hopefully, right? But something else was going on and wasn't being exposed. So where did you go from there?
Well, so I started dabbling around with it. And I noticed that I was getting kids be way more interested, way more connected with, see, like the way that we teach, I might be teaching 4 subjects to one student. And what I noticed was when I started going about it this way, not only did the relationship explode, but their confidence went way up. And then all of a sudden, kids that didn't want to read, like I had these 2 boys, Jamie and Mike, sweetheart kids, hockey kids. They were like tough as nails, little guys, and they hated reading. They became protective over our classroom library. And like I'm still in touch with them. And they say the biggest difference was you got us to start thinking that we actually weren't dumb. And the only way that you could do that, it was just by accessing that, going about it in a different way. Kids are so intuitive. Like they pick up on everything. And so unfortunately, some of the conclusions they come to aren't always accurate. Sometimes they come, like a question I ask often is, of all the grade 12 students that I interview, I always ask them, was there a time that you can think back when you determined in your head if you were smart or dumb? And they all say yes. And you go, okay, so not that I believe in smart and dumb, but I know that's their language. And I'm like, so when is that? Grade 3, 4. It almost always is grade 4. And that's like, I've interviewed over 3,000 students now. And I don't mean like, hey, how's it going? I mean like in depth, digging around and finding out what's making them tick. And you see a pattern like that over and over. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. So what does that mean in education when kids are already determining whether they're smart or dumb? And unfortunately, more often than not, they focus on what they're not as opposed to what they are. And then you go for the remainder of your years in school thinking that way. It can be a huge detriment. So that was that was a huge shift, was for me being able to kind of go, okay, how am I going to find out more information about this? So I started interviewing them and asking them all sorts of questions. What is it about them? And the very first thing I started doing was trying to help kids figure out what their strengths were. This was a game changer for me, like a legit game changer. And not only because we could figure out more about the student, but because it lights them up. And in fact, when I do this with parents, I have run workshops for parents to understand their child's strengths. And every time the parents end up going, holy smokes, what about me? Like, actually, what are my strengths? I'm actually, now that I think about it, what are mine? Who are the big influencers in my life? So the information that I'm going to share with you guys actually came from a guy named Marcus Buckingham. And Marcus Buckingham worked with the Gallup organization for years and years. And since then he's gone out on his own. He's like a strengths guru. But he did all of his stuff geared towards Fortune 500 companies. And it was all about, when you're building a company, how do you get people into the right spots so that they can be successful and so your business can thrive? And so I went through this curriculum and I was looking at it, and I was right around when I was doing my life coaching. I was just finishing up my master's, and I was like, wow, how could like this? Why would we wait until people are adults to start creating this conversation with people? Like, everyone talks about being proactive. Well, could we do this with kids? I'm like, this would be so easy to do with kids. And so what I did was I adapted the material. And Marcus, actually, he'd be on Oprah Winfrey. And I think it was the week after he'd been on Oprah, he flew out to our school and came and met with all of our kids to see what it was that we were doing with these kids. And it was phenomenal. He was shocked because he never meant for it to be for kids that age. He had no idea it was going to have that kind of impact.
To get the most out of this topic, please join us for part 2, where Donnie shares how he flips the traditional definitions of strength and weakness with his students so that their paradigm shifts and they start to see things differently and themselves more accurately. And as always, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and check out relevant links in the description below. Till next time, take care and God bless.